One of the things that I found on JLP, one of the things that really drew me in was it's called The Nobody. And were these threads on this forum about the Nobody. And the Nobody is this anomaly. He's this guy who, like, sheerly through his own mental and spiritual powers, manages to overcome the elite. And all of the elite are looking at him. They're all noticing him, and they're all trying to figure out, like, what is it about this guy that gives him so much power? And they're all interested in him. And on these threads, there were definitely, like, regulars, like people who you would always find there. And when I first found the meme, I think it held the same kind of source of fascination for me as it would for so many people that were drawn there day after day, like spending sleepless nights on these nobody threads, channeling this story of the nobody. And I think all of them, everybody who went to those threads, thought that they were the nobody. I think that everybody talked about he, like in the third person pronoun, and they were really talking about themselves, and they were really telling the story of themselves and their own astral spiritual battles. But somehow it all coagulated into this story of this one man. And those threads are still going on GLP under the name of The Anomaly. Probably partly because the nobody, that phrase, is banned. And all of those threads, like if you started a nobody thread, they were often locked or taken off of GLP, so you had to like refer to the nobody by like a different name, like the water bearer or something like that. This like Jesus-like figure, this Messiah-like figure that just, you know, like blows everybody out of the water. So when I first found this thread, I was sitting in like my biology class and I started reading about it, and I was just so fascinated. I couldn't stop. I wanted to know everything about the nobody. I was like, I am the nobody, which I think everybody thinks. But I was a regular on those threads. And, you know, like, I started like showing my intellectual, like, aptitudes there. And, like, that's how I kind of found the group that I fell in with. Which, I don't know, maybe I should leave their names out of it. But what's important to understand about the nobody is the nobody has existed throughout history, and the most important thing about the nobody is he doesn't have a name. He doesn't have ego. He doesn't have this connection to the false self. He's this figure that, like, he doesn't need to take credit for the amazing work that he's doing. He just does it because it is his spiritual mission to accomplish. And I think that's part of what makes the message of the nobody so powerful, and how this legend developed. And it doesn't really matter who invented it, because it took on a life of its own, and arguably a very toxic life, because the people that went to those threads day after day, myself among them, a lot of them become very, very paranoid, feeling like people are stalking them, feeling like they're being targeted. And, you know, like, as I'll discuss in a later video, there are weird things that go on at GLP, and people do get targeted for these mind games. And a lot of it could be technological, because the people who made GLP are they're like technological wizards. Like, they know about the deep, dark secrets of the web. So going there, you almost get this like dopamine rush, and you become addicted to being there. And it becomes this competition to wear the crown, the nobody crown. And the one who wears the nobody crown has all of this power. And you feel the power, you feel it energetically. And it's this ongoing competition, and it drives people crazy, and it really does lose the essence of the nobody, because the irony of the nobody is there's this pursuit of ego to be the most powerful, whereas the message of the nobody is really that this is a man who doesn't need ego, so he doesn't need to take credit for power. So I would always spend time on those threads pointing out that irony. It's important to understand that the nobody is this very mysterious, like, archetype that I think the story of the hero, Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, The Hero's Journey, I think the nobody really is this hero. And this hero is all of us. So, like, while you're pursuing the perfection of the soul, it's kind of almost like building this nobody self. But, you know, the irony is that those threads a lot of the time took away from people's higher self, not added to it. So I'm definitely going to talk more about the nobody in coming episodes, but I wanted to put my 2 cents in about it. I know that on my blog, it's basically the only reason people visit my blog is because they Google the nobody, because people that go to GLP are just so fascinated by it. So, like, I have all these hits on my articles about the nobody. And some people have kind of said, oh, I think that author, being me, doesn't believe that the nobody is real. And my belief is definitely not that. It's a lot more complicated than that. But more to come on that. It's a very interesting story, and it's definitely part of this story.
Hello, today is June 20, 2019. This is Sun So. As promised, this is my first video, and I think truly, although I had made a few more before, but this will be the first one on a line of many interesting videos about many different subjects. I think the first video that initiates the journey, I think it had to be about the anomaly, the nobody, the one. Is merited from all the conversations and threads, and I think it had to be. So as I promised, this is my first actual video for real. Let's start with who is the anomaly. Well, it's a long conversation, but we can say that the anomaly is the one who discovered the true nature of reality, the true deepness, or actually it is this realm, this dimension. He did it without the connections of the usual, the elite have, the family, the bloodlines. He did it because it was a natural progression. It was his time to actually reach this state. The journey of the anomaly is that of a lonesome hero, an anti-hero, who through his own effort discovered the truth about himself, the cosmos, and the purpose of reality, although reality has no deep real purpose. But in the anomaly, the purpose becomes purpose. It's strange. What is the anomaly supposed to do? I mean, what is his mission? Well, his mission, first of all, was the evolution of his own capability, his own consciousness, his own power, his own self. For how can he transform a world or a humanity or an individual or anything for that matter if he himself cannot transform himself first, So the key or the base of his step, of his power to transform was to transform himself, to arise himself from the common base of the animal human and to reach a higher state to where he could gain the energy to produce actual change. His next step after acquiring high evolution, high consciousness, is basically to choose what he's planning to do with his life, with his world, with reality. He can either choose to leave the world, reach ascension through the transmutation of the body into energy, so he can finally explore the higher dimensions and come with higher consciousness, or he can choose to stay at least for a little more time and help evolve humanity in the same way he evolved, to give them a shot, a chance to reach at least partially his state, in order for them to change civilization. At this moment, I'm burning some incense. The smell is really, the aroma is actually very, very pleasant. So as I do this video, I'm enjoying that smell. I'm drinking a beer also, not the Daily Baileys, at least for today. Anyway, so his purpose is his self-evolution, and with it, the evolution of humanity. If he, right now as he walks, he's not only a human anymore. He transcended the state. Now he walks as a cosmos, as a universe, as a presence which accesses all consciousness, all space and time. He can actualize and act in ways that is not common. It is anomalic. Why? Because he has access to higher states of information, higher degrees of energy, mental energy, having that he is operating within high expansions of time, space, energy, information, and reality. Therefore, he can do things which are not normally capable under human reality. This does not mean he has supernatural powers. It means he has more choice or more free will to act upon the world. As I had told you before, the world is a condition of our mental state. So how will the nobody change the world? How will the anomaly create a new order of things? Well, by changing the mental state of humanity. And how do you change the mental state of humanity? By elevating human consciousness. As he ends the condition of ignorance upon the world, and he elevates human consciousness, the new systems of reality and governing bodies and social structures can emerge out of such evolution. So the anomaly will change your mental state collectively in order for him to change the world. You see? The coming world will be a world of opportunity, hope, and vision. You know, a world without vision cannot progress. You lack vision as a people now. Well, what else can I say about the anomaly? The anomaly is a nobody who cares not about the social condition of his place. He is at the bottom and he will arise to the top. Why? Because he has nothing to lose and everything to gain. But why? You see, only somebody that seeks not the power of the world can have the power of the world. But why? Because to have absolute power, you must have no fear to lose anything. You know, you must not fear to lose, or you must not reach or attempt to reach an established situation. Because in the moment you do, then you're afraid to lose such place, and then you lose power. You see, the anomaly has nothing to lose, therefore he has everything to gain. Having nothing to lose and having no fear to lose anything, he can go for absolute power or full control of the world. This does not mean he wants the absolute power out of greed or selfishness, but out of selflessness. You see, I guess to reach absolute power, you must have selflessness. To pull the sword out of the stone, you must have the strength of selflessness, love, and universal truth. Only to the one that holds these elements can have the world and can change the world. In reality, any human being can be the nobody. That's the situation with him. That's what is special about him. Anybody can be him, because what he is knowledge. What separates God from a human being? Knowledge. To be God, you must have the knowledge of God. If you have such knowledge, then you can become God. What separates an anomaly from a normal human being is knowledge. Knowledge is power. So he is the light who emerged from the darkness, who has the power to use both the light and the darkness. That's another thing with him. Having the knowledge of the occult, of the old ways of the past and the future, he can access many paths. He's not limited in free will and capability. The anomaly is the cosmos now, as he accesses all consciousness and eternity within himself. Therefore, if he chooses, he can end the universe, the cosmos, as the cosmos is him. The cosmos responds to him. His entire life, his entire self is represented by it. Or he can choose to allow it to continue, that's his choice. Anyway, so this is my first attempt of my first video about this subject. Tell me what you think. The anomaly, the nobody. the one. Goodbye. Good evening. Today we will talk again about one of our favorite subjects, the anomaly, the nobody. Today's title, How He Will Do It. How would you take over the world? How would you reach the capacity and the power to control an entire human species? I mean, first of all, you will have to have the ambition. Once you have the ambition, then you get the program, the architecture of how to achieve it. Only someone with an ego, a capability, an intelligence large enough to aspire to something like that can actually attempt such amazing task. For only if you can dream such task can such task be accomplished. For if you believe that it's not possible, then how can it be possible? So how he will do it? Well, he's human, too human. I can say the most truth human that's ever walked the earth. Therefore, he has the power to access those human powers within. So how he will do it? Well, he will use his unique individuality on a global scale to influence, alter, and disturb the entire hymen and psychic of the species. As humanity has lost the ability to access true individuality and entity, they will be attracted to him like bees to the honey. Neither presidents, political figures, religious or artistic personalities of any kind will be able to deviate such attention of him as the point of influence, as the point of energy and consciousness. To have such point of consciousness, then you must gain true individuality, not based in the paradigm of human, organic, biological program, but access true identity that can only come by introspection, meditation, and the awareness of infinite reality. Something very rare among human beings, which mostly spend their times acquiring titles and businesses and social positions and relationships, and I doubt they will be busy attempting to understand the inner powers of a human being. Then as the world's attention is on him, he very likely will engulf with his own consciousness, individuality and energy, the entire consciousness of the species, overwhelmingly, until he becomes the only interface where humanity derives its own understanding of self and reality. Being that he will be the consciousness from which all things will be measured, then he could, based on his own self and activity, he can regulate human morality, law, and self-behavior, being that everybody will measure themselves according to his own entity. This will mean he will be the center of consciousness, the God self. After he has attention of humanity, he has gained full power as the center self, as the light that the world serves to know itself. He will take over the entire planet, and he will establish himself as the earth administrator, based in a new order, a new world system of government. He will establish world government, unify the species, under a single rim. He will use the entire creative energy, not his direction of the species, to create whatever realm he chooses, being that all is mind. Therefore, whoever controls the high mind is God. Anything is possible if you control the imagination and creative energies of the species. This in reality will be the greatest act of magic ever performed, for what he imagined will be. He will hold the power of the entire earth over creation, simply because he can. Because the species, by lacking self-internal capacity, they have allowed this to happen. Not that this is bad, this is good. Somebody has to take the direction of the world. No God, no devil needed. He will not need exterior powers outside himself. He will use his inner powers, as he is his own God and stands on his own energy and presence. I think only now, with the tremendous advancements in communication technology, such thing is possible. As no other time we have the technological development that we have now. He will be in the global consciousness with ease through cell phones, computers, and more, connected to a wide network called internet, what we call internet today. This will aid him and feel like a perfect ring to his hands. His activities, his power, his influence he will have cannot be he is evil. Therefore, his actions, whatever he does in the world, in universal terms, will always be for your own good. In the moment, you probably will not understand this. But when you look back into the past, into all the things that will occur, you will understand that this was for the greater good of the species and its survival. The truth is that in no other time in human history such a task could have been possible, let alone imagined. For the beginning of this task can only be if you can imagine it, and therefore work towards that manifestation. The advancements in technology can permit a single super consciousness now to take control of lesser intuitive consciousness, such as what the masters represent today. Their weakness is their ignorance. He should strengthen them, be a new understanding of knowledge, self, and capability, human capability. Today we can say that the entire minute intelligence on the planet is reflected in its current primitive civilization. Current reality represents human intelligence as it stands today, which is operating almost at the base level of the primal animal instinct, with small types of intelligence that emerges in the individual on occasion. Such individuals are the ones responsible for many of the philosophy, the technology. They are rare. They are Teslas and Newtons and other beings that do not represent the general intelligence of the species. These are rare beings, and they are the ones that actually move forward human civilization. A civilization that can barely function, for it's a planet full of violence, war, disease, aging, and death. Operating on such animal state, they cannot overcome their own condition, as they lack the capability of internal awareness and intelligence outside the archetypes of history which they are following. They are prisoners of history. They are prisoners of culture. They are prisoners of religion. They cannot think for themselves. They cannot gain individuality. This is the difference between him and them. He can gain individuality, and based on the energy of this individuality, of this center power, he can gain access and power to control a world such as this one. The truth is that this planet will be an easy prey to a real superintelligence, whose ego and imagination has no limits, frankly. The world will say, as he creates world government and establish a free humanity, he has erased borders, nations, gods have fallen. The old order has concluded. Eternity echoes through his every step. His influence is overwhelming. What has never been imagined he has done. We have almost 8 billion human beings who use their living energy to breed like rabbits. They could never amount to anything outside being a common meat bag, another replica, breeding and following cultural archetypes. Never capable of a single individual thinking, thought. He is the type of individual who can transmute and internalize his sexual energies to elevate his consciousness higher than the entire species' collective awareness. Therefore, his power comes not as thou religious figures which derivate their energy via old systems of religion and books. No, he is his own center. The truth is that also political figures, they derive their own power based in the established culture and national state systems, which they cannot, of course, operate outside them. So they themselves are weak, are just reflections of the culture, just as spiritual leaders of religions are a reflection of the religion, of the blueprint of the past. They are not true identities. I think the current state of humanity is just begging for someone with real power to just take over this poor world and to actually do something positive. There is no one else that can actually do this at this moment but him. Knowing and aware of this, he will do that which he must do. I think the only thing that could really be a challenge to him will be the release of the invention of advanced sentient artificial intelligence to fight him. But I think that will be futile, as both of them will probably, having true intelligence, will understand each other and join forces against the heavy breathing humanity. I think the masses and the elite of this planet need to be governed, need to be civilized, need to be twitched to be humans. I think the world, having never experienced this type of energy in human, in life, and in individuality, is very likely that they will call him an antichrist. And yet, he will set humanity free from his dogma and myth, and from the limitations of his imagination. Such limitations emerge from the egregore, the access of regulatory energy from. They cannot overcome the blueprints of the past. They cannot create new religion, new culture, new systems. They are stagnated. They are only replicas after all. They need someone to come and actualize reality. Although that normally will be think as the Antichrist, the devil, because in the moment he will not be understand. In time, the world will understand him, and they will know that he was the liberator, the breaker of chains, the creator of worlds. And as they understand him, they will become as him, gaining his power, his insight. and they themselves will become worlds and realms, and eternity at once will open, just as it has opened for him. Well, thank you for listening. This is today's Anomaly Nobody video. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. Good evening, dear observers and listeners. Here I am with a new video about our subject, the anomaly, the nobody. I'm burning some delicious incense, so the smell of the incense and the fire and the snowstorm, it makes the surrounding environment really delicious, really pleasant to talk about this specific subject tonight. So tonight I'm going to tell you a story, the story of the universe and the base consciousness that created it. It is a narration never told completely, as the knowledge to know it, to tell it was truly never there. The combination of knowledge and experience and the totality of humanity to actually understand this story was never really there until now. The mind to put it all together, I don't think it existed to this point. The title of the video today will be "We Are Inside the Imagination of a Dead Person, an Ancient Anomaly in a Malefic Creation." It has taken me many weeks of thinking and meditation on this subject, and it finally came to me what this place is. I know it will sound crazy, and why this creation seems so defective and malignant. For it is the imagination of a dead person, someone that died long ago in another universe and time. But how? There has never really been a beginning. There is, however, a creation within creation of an unending sequence of self-fractals, moving on the eternal presence, moving on the eternal present forever. Gods within gods. Universes are created once a person reaches and completes the process of ascension. You can achieve this in two ways. The proper way is to ascend into the spiritual realm without having to experience death, by transmuting your physicality from matter into pure consciousness, energy. The second is when an entity had indeed the knowledge of the path of ascension in black magic, but yet it did not have the complete capability to ascend, and it dies before reaching the full completion. Because this person had the knowledge of what it takes to sustain one's entity in the abyss of nothingness. If it has the will, it can maintain the individuality entity that it built in a lifetime. The abyss will not torn that entity apart in the nothingness, as it has the will to sustain itself there, Once it's able to sustain itself, it can create realms based on this entity experience. The problem is that if this person did not have the capability to transcend when it was alive, and is able to reach the God state in death by virtue of the knowledge of the path, such a dark being would be incomplete and it will remain with some of the negative characteristics and defects that prevented the ascension in the first place. This means this being gains the power of Godhood without completing the work of his persona. This gives him the power to create universes and living beings out of his imagination. When we analyze this creation as it is, we see the tremendous flaws of his biological systems and of the universe itself. Animals must butcher and eat other animals with the utmost cruelty. We must consume the dead bodies of animals and plants to survive ourselves. Why does one must destroy and consume another being to sustain one's life? Why does life must feed on death, and death and life to maintain this circle of creation? Because the blueprint of the mind that built this system of existence was defective, deficient, and cruel in the first place. It seems that such entity wants to inflict the greatest amount of pain upon the manifestation of his imagination, because he himself had a deep pain in his interiors that wanted to express and force it upon others. Let me take a drink. He very likely created this universe based on the blueprints of another cosmos from where he emerged, from a similar copy of such place, but infused with his personality, characteristics, and dark energy of this place. For this reason, this planet and all biological forms must suffer a tormented life. Everything that is must toil to sustain by eating another and must endure the physical body that can break down easily by accidents and that gets sick also easily. From the moment it's born, it begins to die and decay, as creation is deficient in energy and experience, and is infused with the malignance and cruelty of its dark, incomplete creator. This being is an ancient anomaly that emerged from another anomaly in another primordial universe, where he gained the consciousness of self, and just as he did gain such consciousness, another anomaly can gain the same self-awareness of self even within this creation, and free himself from the limitations of such creation, just as he did. That is how gods are created. In reality, it's the same eternal entity, experiencing itself in many forms and creations and lives that expand forever. This new consciousness being is a new anomaly, who has gained the knowledge of Godhood, and who has understood the macabre nature of this realm. And if it's able to ascend without dying, it will gain the right and power to supersede this established creation and conclude the dark ancient anomaly that built this place, by dissolving this being and its creation into himself, therefore concluding this evil dimension once and for all. The ancient anomaly will end its total suffering, for what this creation is an aspect of his great and prolonged pain. As this new anomaly saves himself from the process of birth and death under this realm, he will also save the older anomaly. The creation itself will also be dissolved to end the great error of this existence. The story of this being is the greatest story ever told, with a never-ending progression of realities and creations unfolding in eternity. All the things as strong and well-wrapped in trickery they can be, by a well-versed mind in the darkness, they will always have a deficiency from them that can be exploited, being that they were created in an error and with evil intention, such as this universe. Whatever suffering he inflicted on his creation, frankly, he inflicted on himself. He received the fullness of what he gave. Now, even, he must now be put to rest into the nothingness. For even him was a necessary experience for the greater good of the being entity that must know all things. With this concludes this video. Thank you for listening. Until next time, friends. Goodbye.